Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast Offseason Preview Series, where Bryce Simon and I break down all 30 NBA offseasons for each team. And today we're going to talk about your NBA runner-up this season, the Western Conference champion San Antonio Spurs. They have been eliminated in the NBA Finals by the NBA champion New York Knicks in a strange series that I feel like should have largely just been this real, like, not coronation, certainly, because I thought that the Knicks were going to win the series, but like real, exciting moment for this Spurs franchise and for this team. And I think it is ultimately that. I think that the Spurs should be excited. I think the organization's excited. They have the guy moving forward in Victor Wembanyama, who is going to be, if not already is, the most impactful, best player in the NBA. I do think that like the backcourt questions that have been raised now regarding De'Aaron Fox, regarding Stephon Castle, regarding Dylan Harper are interesting. It felt like to me that there was not a concerning lack of physicality, but just like a slight lack of physicality on the interior at times, right? They play really 4 perimeter players all the time around Victor Wembanyama. Right. The closest thing they have to a true 4-man, I might argue, is Harrison Barnes right now. And he's certainly a free agent. So, Bryce, as we get into this is a team that is clearly on the come up. This is a team that's going to be contending for a title for the next 7 years, I would say, at least 6 or 7 years, while they have Victor Wembanyama under contract. And certainly a big piece of this summer is his extension as well. I think they should just basically be excited, even if there are some things that they have to figure out, if only because the timeline under this new collective bargaining agreement, with how aggressive the aprons are, does get shorter, even for teams that draft as well as the Spurs have over the course of the last 3 years.
Yeah, I do wonder where we'll be even a week or two from now in terms of how we look back on this Spurs season, because they push things so far forward, at least compared to what I thought it was going to be for them, that now I'm almost, I did move the goalpost. It's like, man, that's a disappointing finals, because they led the series for what's the stat going around? 70% of the minutes, 72% of the minutes, something like that. And specifically in games 4 and 5, the amount of minutes they led of the 4 and 8 of the 48 were just ridiculous. But I do have to stop and go back to not just where I thought they were, because I was wrong about them every step of the way, preseason, regular season, into the postseason. The one time I finally picked them was the one time they finally lost. But they really, really went to a place that not many teams do with their level of experience and youth. So I do think it's important to remember that when talking about what they did this year. Moving forward, I think it is, okay, we have the guy, the potential best player in the world, first team All-NBA, two-way player. I think they have the number 2 guy in Dylan Harper, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit as we talk about De'Aaron Fox and Steph Castle and all of that. So to me, those are your pillars, or whatever you want to call it. I think Steph Castle I would include in that as well, because I just think Steph Castle is a really good basketball player. I'm not saying Devin Vassell, Julian Champagnie, De'Aaron Fox aren't part of that, but to me, those are kind of the 2 and then 3 guys. How do we build out around that? And to me, when I look at the roster, I think it is at the 4 and 5 positions. I actually sneaky want to talk about what you thought about Luke Kornet throughout the playoffs and specifically in the finals. And if that's an area that maybe that they could look to upgrade or at least add to with another option. But definitely that 4 position, depending on where we think Carter Bryant fits into that part of the conversation. So I think it's really the De'Aaron Fox conversation has to happen, of course, but to me, it's more about how can they continue to round out this roster? Because by the end of that series, Sam, they were playing 6 guys, really? It was the starters and Harper. Keldon Johnson was not impactful in the NBA Finals. Again, we can have the Luke Kornet conversation. Maybe you don't think it's much of a conversation. And Carter Bryant just wasn't ready. But I think to me, for them, it's okay, how can we continue to build out the margins, the depth, the guys that are NBA playoff and NBA finals ready. And some of that may be youth in Carter Bryant's case, but also maybe there's some things that they could go out and do in free agency, with the non-tax MLE and those type of things.
So shout out to Andrew Claudio, our producer, for building these beautiful graphics for us. And I totally agree with you. They have 9 guys under contract for next season. The starters: Dylan Harper, Luke Cornett, Carter Bryant, Keldon Johnson. Those are the 9. They have $153 million committed for those 9 players on the books, which means that they have, $52 million away from the first apron. They're $65 million away from the second apron. They're $47 million away from the tax line still. I think that the big point here for me, just looking through this, is that this team, because of the presence of Victor Wembanyama and Dylan Harper, those 2 guys mean that the Spurs are in a better position to build moving forward, I think, than any organization in the league, is the reality. And yes, the De'Aaron Fox deal does not look great, but they have Stephon Castle, who looks like a terrific defensive player on top of being like a useful offensive player. We'll talk about some of his inefficiencies at some point, but they have Devin Vassell, who is a really great starting wing in today's NBA. They have Julian Champagnie, who's going to get expensive here. We'll talk about that in a second. They just have a lot to be really excited about. And I'm really enthusiastic about Carter Bryant as well. He's a 9-foot standing reach almost. He could solve a lot of the, hey, like, we need a bigger body questions. If he can round out his game with some rebounding ability, with some physicality, some other things that, he needs to bring to the table a little bit more consistently on the glass, at least. He's certainly very physical on the perimeter as a defender. So I think where we should start this is, should they operate? So they have Harrison Barnes, Kelly Oubre, Lindy Waters, Mason Plumlee, Jordan McLaughlin, Bismack Biyombo. Should they operate over the cap or under the cap is a real question to me to begin this thing, because they could operate over the cap here just by keeping the Harrison Barnes number on their books for a while and then doing that, signing him to a contract that maybe is a little bit bigger than what people would expect, right? For a 1-year contract, which I'm sure he'd be enthusiastic about, right? You could operate over the cap this summer if you want to, and do a non-taxpayer mid-level, and you have 15 million at that point, or you could operate under the cap, have 12 million under the cap ballpark. It'd be a little bit less than that after some minimums. So maybe it'd be like 7 million after roster charges, but you'd also have the room exception at 8 million. So really, it just depends on kind of how they want to handle this. And more than that, I think it depends on, are we sure that the 9 guys that are here on the roster right now are on the roster moving forward? And Bryce, I think the answer to that is going to be yes. I think that they're probably going to keep all 9 of these guys in Fox, Castle, Champagnie, Vassell, Wembanyama, Harper, Cornett, Bryant, and Johnson. And I guess that where this conversation should just like go now is this De'Aaron Fox conversation. De'Aaron Fox is starting a 4-year, $220+ million extension. I don't think that the De'Aaron Fox contract is all that movable in terms of excitement. B, I would guess they're probably not going to move him right now, if only because it would be at a relative nadir in terms of his value, coming off of the playoffs where he was very clearly injured. Like, he very clearly has an ankle sprain right now that sapped a lot of his speed and made him nowhere near the player he was in the regular season. Third, the market for point guards this summer is just not in their favor, largely because of the draft. The teams that want point guards are going to be able to go get point guards in the draft. Michael Brown, Keaton Wagler, Darius Acuff, Kingston Flemings, guys like that, right? Like, there are 4 elite point guard prospects in this upcoming draft class, on top of guys like Braden Burries, on top of guys in terms of depth that you could go get, like Christian Anderson, Bennett Sturts, LeBaron Philon, everything like that, right? So there are like 9 or 10 really, really good guards. Plus, the trade market. You can just go get John Morant for half the cost, basically, of what De'Aaron Fox is in terms of long-term commitment, right? It's actually like a third of the cost in terms of long-term commitment as compared to what you would have De'Aaron Fox on your books for. So you can say that, look, after Devin Vassell's comments after Game 5, where he said, it felt like Dylan Harper was, frustrated with his role and with his minutes sometimes this year. Yeah, I understand that. I get that point. And I think that there is going to be a time where you have to move De'Aaron Fox. I just don't think that it's right now, if I'm being honest with you, Bryce. And that's going to create complications, but I don't think that they're going to be able to do this right now.
I would listen to the idea, I think, is where I'm at. Like somebody in our live after Game 5 brought up the idea of Paul George, and we both said like Philly just doesn't do that, or we don't believe that Philly would do that. I wouldn't do that if I was Philly. My point here is, if you gave me a scenario, a name, a trade that made sense, I would consider it.
Okay, but, so here's the team that I think you can very easily make a case for doing this.
Okay,
Phoenix.
Okay. Yep.
Phoenix probably wants a point guard. I know that they could easily re-sign Colin Gillespie, but Colin Gillespie can be like an elite sixth man in the NBA, and I don't think anybody's going to bat an eye at that, right? You could pretty easily do something around like Jalen Green for 2 years, Grayson Allen, and I think that gets you the money. Or you could do Jalen Green and Royce O'Neal, or like whatever you want to do, right?
Do I have to have Jalen Green in the deal? This isn't even like Jalen Green shade. Like I don't think that if I'm the Spurs, that's like my interest is more turning De'Aaron Fox into like Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, like three rotation wing, like just jam pack my wing depth.
So I think that it has to be either Jalen Green or Dylan Brooks. And I would guess that boy Phoenix is talking right
now.
They're not
giving
Dylan Brooks.
They're not giving up Dylan Brooks. Okay, so let me ask you this. Could Jalen Green play the 6-man role in San Antonio? Maybe I need to consider this a little bit more.
And what, you move Keldon at that point?
So we would start Dylan Harper, Steph, same starting lineup, and then Jalen Green is just like your bench scorer that comes in, gets buckets, and maybe I shouldn't have been so dismissive. I still don't know that I'm sold on that idea, but
the real reason you consider it is that it just cuts the contract by a third. You know what I mean? For Jalen Green for 2 years versus De'Aaron for 4 years.
Do we save some money too? Because this was the other thing to your under the cap point. I don't think they can get far enough under the cap to make sense to stay under, because they can't get to the non-tax MLE number, which is what I would be interested in. But in this trade, are they saving $6 or $7, $8, $9 million in this deal or no? Like, is there enough to then push them under the cap to where they could be a non-tax MLE? Because that would be another tertiary aspect that I would be interested in. If I could save enough money that now I have $16 million in cap space plus the $9 million room.
If you could do Jalen and Royce and that's it, I don't know if that deal works money-wise. It should, in theory. I'm not positive. I can do a trade checker and look at that. But if you could do Jalen and Royce for De'Aaron, like in theory, that would work. The other thing is, I think in theory, you could trade De'Aaron before the end of the league year too. And his deal is cheaper before the end of the league year.
I'm a little bit interested in that. I don't know. I did not come into this so Spot Track says, and that would save them 6 point. Oh no, that goes over. Why is that saying over? Oh, because this isn't using De'Aaron's new number.
Yeah, De'Aaron's new number is in the 50s.
Yeah.
Not sure why. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I've struggled with this a little bit, trying to get the new league year versus the old league year on some of this. I would have to think about it a little bit more, but that's a little bit interesting to me. Especially again, if I can save some cap space. To your point, I cut down the length of the deal. I would really
be clear, like this makes San Antonio a worse team next year.
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox is still really good. I know he had a bad playoffs because of the ankle, but like De'Aaron Fox is still a really good basketball player.
Yes. Are we sure these guys are all going to... Okay, so here's my question. Let's say we don't trade De'Aaron Fox. Who's coming out of the starting lineup? I'm not bringing Dylan Harper off the bench next year, Sam. So
neither am I.
So here's where I hesitate to say this makes them a worse team, because I'm also a worse team if I send Julian Champagnie to the bench and piss him off, or I send De'Aaron Fox to the bench and make, you know what I mean? Like, so
this is where the Champagnie conversation comes up, because Champagnie is extension eligible, or you could decline his team option and do a contract if you want, basically. So you can get Julian, like, you know, realistically, you get him $12 million extra dollars. If you want to pay Julian Champagnie $15 million next year, you could do that and just do it on like a declining basis, right? You could decline the team option for next year, pay him 4 years, 50 million, 55, somewhere in that ballpark, which doesn't feel crazy to me for what he is, but you could do it on a descending basis and get him like $12 million up front this year if you want to. I mean, by the way, that's another way to get over the cap if you want to do that too.
Yeah. Which is, I think, so here's my other thing, like looking at, like, I don't think Jalen Green is going to accept the off the bench role. I don't know that. I don't know Jalen Green, but like he's pretty much started his entire career. So I'm not sure that you're trading for him and he's going to be excited about being the best sixth man in the NBA. So that Phoenix deal probably doesn't make sense. I just, again, come back to, who are we moving out of the starting lineup? So is it like, hey, Julian, we're taking care of you. Yeah. So now,
hey, we're taking care of you. Like, can you come off the bench?
Okay,
like, we have you locked in for the next 4 years. Can you agree for a year to come off the bench while we figure this out?
Take care of me and trade me to a team that's going to start me, which is what I deserved, and I just proved for an entire regular season and playoff run. That would be my response if I was Julian Champagnie.
Yeah, I mean, someone's going to have to sacrifice here unless you move De'Aaron, and I just don't think the market is going to be that excited. Like, you know, Memphis, if you're willing to give up assets, Memphis would probably be a good spot for this. But like, I don't know that Memphis is going to be all that enthused either. You know what I mean? Like Memphis is going to want things. And I guess my point is there a team, could like Detroit do this?
No. I don't think he makes sense. Okay, so let me ask you this, because you immediately said the Spurs would be worse with Jalen Green and Royce O'Neal, and I agree. De'Aaron Fox is the best player in that deal.
Yeah.
My question to you is, in a vacuum, is there not a deal where De'Aaron Fox for 2 or 3 role players makes them better in the theory of sum of the parts, right? We eliminate who's our 5 starters conversation, and we actually bring in 2 guys who fit better into role. Like, this allows Dylan Harper to flourish. It allows Steph Castle. It keeps Julian Champagnie in the starting lineup. And now we have these, 2 more guys off the bench that is the role that they should be in. And like, is there a sum of the parts? I'm not saying De'Aaron Fox is like,
so here'd be the question. If Miami misses out on Giannis, do they pivot to De'Aaron? Maybe there is a bigger market for De'Aaron than what I'm thinking. Like, Bam and De'Aaron obviously are close, played together at Kentucky. Like, could you do something like Tyler Hero's expiring deal or Andrew Wiggins' expiring deal? Andrew Wiggins would make a lot of sense on this team, by the way.
Yeah.
So like, could you do Andrew Wiggins and the Nikola Jovic contract for De'Aaron Fox? Does that make the Spurs a better team next year? That actually, like, that is one I will hear out. Is that could actually theoretically make the Spurs a better team. But if that's the case, then Miami is then out of the Giannis sweepstakes because they don't have the money to, They would get close on the money to match at that point. They would, because they would still have Hero, we're saying, and they would have the Davion Mitchell deal. They'd be at 45. They could get pretty close on a Giannis deal. So in theory, you could do De'Aaron and Giannis, I think, on Miami.
Yeah, like I wonder if that could make some sense. Again, that the Wiggins doesn't solve the starting lineup thing, that maybe I'm indexing too much, but here's what I don't want, Sam, I guess for me. And again, maybe I'm overblowing this. It's not even about De'Aaron Fox. To me, is you can't have a cap on what you allow Dylan Harper to be next year. Like I'm just so sold on who Dylan Harper is as a player right now. I don't want anything getting in the way of that growth and usage and minutes and role, I guess. And if you tell me like, hey, De'Aaron's going to be willing to play more off the ball and they're going to put the ball in Dylan Harper's hands and whatever, and it's works, then just keep him on the roster. Like, I'm cool with it. I'm not trying to trade De'Aaron Fox. What I'm trying to wonder is if there could be hey, this actually gives Dylan Harper 10% more studio space to explore with his game. And at the same time, we're getting real value by bringing in, maybe it's a wing and then that 4-man that we're talking about, right? That archetype that we think this roster might be missing right now. Even if none of those players are as good as De'Aaron Fox, maybe the sum of how it all comes together ends up giving you more. The answer may be no. Like, again, I talked myself into the Phoenix one. Like that doesn't make sense to me because I don't think that that's what would end up happening with that one. This Miami idea with Wiggins and somebody else, I think maybe I could be a little bit more interested in that, let alone the money aspect. The money aspect is important as well, right? Because like this is going to get expensive. Not this, 2 years from now, Wembanyama's deal will kick in 27, 28, and then Castle the year after that. So there is some of that also.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like trying to like formulate in my head, like the way that something like this would work. I think that like, I guess this would be my question. Cause Miami, the more I think about it, is the easier idea here. Do you think that Andrew Wiggins and Nikola Jovic or like whatever the deals are, do you think that makes the Spurs a better team next year? If you say, hey, Dylan Harper is taking all of De'Aaron Fox's usage, right? And we're assuming he takes a big leap. You then are inputting theoretically a player who fits like reasonably well on an expiring contract in Andrew Wiggins next to Victor Wembanyama. Does that track for you?
I don't think I would be worried about him, but the issue here is it's not necessarily the Wiggins thing. It's more that I just think Dylan Harper is going to get better. Steph Castle is going to get better. Victor's going to get better. And so maybe this is all pointless. And because if I think those guys are going to get better, why don't I just keep De'Aaron Fox? Like, why make a trade and potentially disrupt anything here? So I think they're going to be better because we traded De'Aaron Fox for Andrew Wiggins. I just think they're going to be better because I think those young guys are going to get better and grow and improve. Again, my thing comes down to, as long as that doesn't get stunted by anybody being on the roster, then I think I'm okay with it. I worry about that a little bit, Sam, of like, I don't want the offseason plan to be, we're going to bring Dylan Harper off the bench again next year. I just think he's too good for that. I guess is where I'm at. So give me the result that has him in the starting lineup. Are we okay with Dylan Harper, De'Aaron Fox, Steph Castle, Devin Vassell? Like, can you start that all season long and into the playoffs? I worry about that a little bit in terms of size, or do you ask Vassell to go to the bench and keep Champagnie in the starting lineup? I realize these are good problems to have, but I guess I do have I'm curious.
So insanely, I just checked, even in the new league year, you can do all of De'Aaron Fox and Giannis to Miami while keeping Norman Powell's cap hold, which allows them to like maintain an awesome player. And you send Hero, Davion Mitchell, Kalel Ware, Kasper Siakashonis, Jaime Jaquez to the Bucks, and you send Wiggins and Jovic to the Spurs? And like all of the picks to the Bucks, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're not saying that it's just those players and that's it. Obviously all the picks. But the idea here is that the Spurs are getting off of the Fox money, creating more flexibility, adding Wiggins, adding Jovic, who I think like makes sense within their scheme, to be honest. But probably like the 10th man, maybe the 9th man on that team next year. I don't know. Like I think I'm willing to hear out, at least. Let's say this. I'm willing to hear out that there is a bigger market for De'Aaron Fox than maybe what I initially anticipated. And that if they wanted to do this, they probably could. I think I'm just pretty convinced that they're not going to do it though, Bryce. I think they're probably going to like run this back. If you made me guess, if only because great teams tend to run it back.
I agree. My question to you would be, I guess, or would you want to be open to it? Like, let's take out the personal aspect of if you actually put De'Aaron Fox on the trade block or whatever, that, you know, the personal aspect of that. Let's just say, are you interested in hearing what you could get in return to, or are you perfectly fine if they run it back and think that they're going to be perfectly fine and it's all going to work out? Or would you be aggressively exploring at least what the options would be?
Aggressive is probably the wrong word.
Okay.
I would probably, if there are some GMs that I trust out there that like don't leak and don't do things publicly, I would probably ask around.
You'd be opportunistic.
De'Aaron. Or if somebody called me on De'Aaron because they wanted De'Aaron, right? Again, like if I'm Miami and I'm getting Giannis or I'm missing out on Giannis and I need to do something, I'm probably calling about De'Aaron and seeing what your appetite is. I don't know. Like I'm open to this though, is what I would be open to this without the personal aspect, but the personal aspect's important here. And here's the other thing too. Like one thing I was kind of wondering about last night too was, all right, like Devin Vassell decides to say this publicly, right? Like I'm guessing that this is just way more that like Devin Vassell was very tired off of a long series.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And like just kind of let it rip a little bit on Dylan and was just trying to compliment the way Dylan handled his rookie season.
Agreed.
But like, is there a chance that like some of those guys some of those guys in the locker room might be like, Dylan gave us our best chance to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, he's getting better. He's not going to come back next season and be the same guy. He's probably going to be a better basketball player. So is that, I don't know. Is there anything there too? I don't know. We've talked enough about the De'Aaron trade.
that went way further than what I anticipated, which I think it's a fun exercise. I hope it doesn't come off to Spurs fans that we're like pounding the table that De'Aaron Fox isn't part of this team and they can't win with him. Like that was not my intention. I don't think either of our intentions.
They're gonna, if you made me guess, I think they're going to keep him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So regardless, and again, if you're Miami, by the way, why do you do De'Aaron Fox over Ja Morant or something? Well, the answer in that case particularly is that De'Aaron and Bam Adebayo have a relationship from their time at Kentucky together. And like, maybe you can make a case for Miami, right? Maybe you can make a case for Phoenix. Maybe you can make a case for a couple of these other teams, right? But I do think that I think there might be a little bit more of a market than what I expected, I guess is my point whenever I'm starting to think through this a little bit more.
Sure.
Okay. Julian Champagnie extension is a big thing for me here. We can just get them over the cap if we want with a Julian Champagnie extension.
Done. I would give Julian Champagnie an extension.
What do you think Julian Champagnie is worth?
So I know they're not the same players at all, but I think about what we say we would give like Sandro. And I think Julian Champagnie has proven to be more like, I don't think he would get the full non-tax MLE, but I think it's more than 10 per year. So what'd you say earlier? Like 4 for 50 or something?
Yeah, I said like 4 for 50 and do it as a descending deal.
Yeah.
Where the value of doing it as a descending deal is that if you're at like, 153 million right now or whatever, is that you can put the big number up front here, pay him a decent amount, be up over the cap, especially once you do the 20th overall pick. So you'll be up over the cap at that point, which allows you to have the $15 million non-taxpayer MLE at that point without having to keep like the Harrison Barnes bird rights or like Kelly Olynyk's bird rights or whatever you're trying to do, right? Like you can just get up over the cap pretty easily if you want to. And I think that'd be a good contract. The key is doing contracts that make sense. I think if you did Julian Champagny on a descending contract that starts at $15 million, that's probably like a pretty, or like even 14 or something, that's probably going to be a good contract.
Yeah, I agree. And I would get that done. That makes sense. I think that probably makes sense for Champagny. I like that way of getting over the cap for them as well. I think that's probably the path they go.
The other thing for Champagny that I will say is that if I'm him, I'm probably looking at the Max Strus contract as my guiding light here, right? And that was 464. If I'm the Spurs, I'm probably trying to keep him in the like 450 range, but they have a little bit more leverage on Champagny than what Strus just hit the open market, right? With Champagny, they can keep him on $3 million next season, or they can give him this money up front. He can hit like real free agency earlier in theory while being paid real money, which allows him to then potentially get another bigger contract within 3 years instead of 4 years, right? Where he would be 28 years old as opposed to 29 years old trying to find a second or a third contract at that point, I guess it would be. But I think that there might be some wiggle room to get a Champagny deal done that is advantageous to the Spurs here. And that would give them like the requisite value, you get up over the cap and then have access to the full non-taxpayer mid-level if they want it.
Yep.
So that is something I would get done. Victor Wembanyama's extension. This is a 30-second conversation. Max contract. Yes. Let's get it done.
Yes. I'll give him the language.
All the bells and whistles.
Move on. Let's go.
We're all good.
30 minutes on trading De'Aaron Fox, 30 seconds on extending Victor Wembanyama to the rookie extension.
We're keeping them. We're all good. We're happy. We're excited. We're enthusiastic. You brought up Luke Cornett. They have two guys that are like on essentially expiring contracts. Cornett has $2 million guaranteed in 2027, 28. And then Keldon Johnson is a unrestricted free agent in the summer of 2027. I think that if I was them, I'm probably just running into next season with those guys, unless someone is willing to give me like something slightly different for Keldon that would make sense to me. Like, I don't think Keldon Johnson's going to have like a first round pick out on maybe like a late first round pick he might have out there for himself. But it's an expiring deal. He was not very playable in the playoffs, and that goes like throughout the entirety of the playoffs, let alone in the finals. I'm not but I've never really gotten like the Keldon thing in the way that other people have. He's obviously a great teammate. He's an incredibly energetic human being. I would guess that because of that stuff, he's probably just going to be on the team next year as their sixth man, or really probably seventh man. But regardless, you can keep Keldon if you want. You can not keep him. I don't really have like a strong opinion on this.
Yeah, I think I would just keep him. I would not extend him and figure it out. If we get to the deadline and we need $18 million, that's a decent contract there. I will also point out on the Cornett deal that, if they do like him and they are plenty happy with what he also has a third year that is non-guaranteed as well. So like they have real control in terms of Luke Cornett. Do they want to keep it? Even if they wanted to keep him in 27, 28, then they could get out for nothing in 28, 29. So real flexibility with Cornett's contract for them. Or to your point, that's another $10.5 million if there were to be a move that you wanted to make at some point. I think I just keep both of those guys. Well, also I'm looking to short and long term add something to the center position. Not necessarily, I didn't say upgrade, but I'm adding to that center position in giving another rotation piece there and planning for the eventual moving on from Luke Cornett, be it deadline, next offseason, or even the season after.
It gives them a little bit over 28 million in expiring salary essentially next year, which could be really valuable at the trade deadline. I actually kind of like keeping Cornett and Keldon Johnson for that reason as well. Like you said, give yourself flexibility on the trade market moving forward. Okay, so let's go to mid-level guys, right? This is going to be, I would guess, if not the most popular, like non-taxpayer mid-level destination, one of them, right? Where teams could, some like agents are certainly going to be looking at placing their player here in order to set themselves up for success, right? Is there a player that stands out to you immediately as being the guy that you want?
I mean, I do go to that forward position, and it's a lot of the same names that we've brought up other places. So I think it kind of depends on which one of these guys you think is the best or fits the best I guess Tobias Harris is an unrestricted. Oh, go ahead.
So here's the way that I'll pause on this though. These guys probably have to be willing to come off the bench sometimes too, if not all the time, right? Like if you're doing a Tobias Harris, is Tobias Harris just entering the starting lineup for Julian Champagnie? Like, is that what's happening there? Or are you starting Julian Champagnie? He's the guy that's earned it, right?
Well, I mean, and again, this plays into, now we're talking about
Dylan
two
Harper
guys
situation too. So it probably has to be someone that's willing to come off the bench to me.
I mean, I've continued to say the same name, and so I'm trying everything not to say his name yet again. But I think Sandro makes a ton of sense for them because he can play the four.
And he's been there, by the way, too.
Yeah. Yep. I just think he makes a ton of sense because he does two things here. He can play at the four off the bench, but he can also, as I've been saying, add to this center rotation and give them something a little bit different if they need to play him at the five. I think him or somebody like him makes a ton of sense to add to this team. And as we've said, other times we've brought him up, we don't think that even takes the full non-tax MLE.
Is this a Rui Hachimura spot?
So that's an interesting one. I like the idea of just adding the floor spacing there and
big rebounding guards to make up for his struggles on the glass as well.
And, you know, if he gets lost off the ball defensively, you have Victor making up for that. I do think that this is one of the scenarios where he could make some real sense. Rui's definitely a name that jumped out to me as well.
Yeah. Rui is a name that I looked at and I was like, oh, that actually kind of tracks for them. Bigger body, 4-man, gives them like a little bit more up and down lineup versatility and flexibility. Probably is willing to come off the bench, I would guess, just given his career to this point, especially if he wants to win. I think that Rui tracks to me, is like a real name for them.
I think Tobias, if they're looking for something a little bit different, he's not the floor spacer that Rui is. He's not the versatile, like forward big that Sandro is. But let's say for whatever reason, he does leave Detroit and is available. I do wonder if he'd be willing to come off the bench for a team like San Antonio. And because I think at this point in his career, that's the best role for him. I think that's where he would flourish the most. And I bring him up because what we talk about all NBA finals, having where do you go in these clutch moments? And I'm not saying Tobias Harris is going to be on the floor in the clutch, but maybe it's in the second quarter whenever Victor's out of the game or Harper's resting or whatever. Like he still was a guy that Detroit ran some offense through in the playoffs, in the regular season, you know, one or two possessions here and there off the bench. I do think he could be a guy that if he gets away from Detroit for whatever reason, could play a nice role. And I do think he's at the point of his career where coming off the bench, I would guess would be okay with him if it's for a contender like this.
Yeah, it's fair enough. Other name that I thought about was John Collins, is like your kind of hybrid 4 or 5 smaller guy that you know, might be able to eat some minutes at center occasionally, gives you like a bit of a different look in that he can space the court some as well. like an option at least. And I would venture he'd probably be willing to come off the bench for like a real team. Right.
Yep.
But yeah, like those are the names that I think we're looking at, and they should be able to shop like top of the market if they want to. Like they should be the team that can go get the guy that they think fits best within this core. The other place where they're going to be able to go and get somebody is in the draft. They have number 20, number 35, number 42, number 44. I think that there is no way that they make all of these picks.
Yeah.
If I'm them, I'm probably trying to trade two of them for future value, particularly like if you could move 35 and 42 or something, that would make sense. Let's start with number 20 and let's just yell out some names that really make sense for them.
Hold on. I got to pull up my draft board. Can I ask you one quick question about the free agent thing? Just quick.
Sure. Let's do it.
Should they be in a market for floor spacing at all? You know, like we bring up Luke Kennard, Tim Hardaway Jr., Shamit, stuff like that. Like, is there a world where I know we're already talking about a crowded backcourt and all of that, but is there a space? Is there space for just adding just a legit floor spacer with all of the, you know, with the defense you have?
Shamit's kind of an interesting name for them, actually. Like if he decides not to go back to New York or if they decide they can't pay him, Shamit's actually a name that really works for them. Like moves the ball quickly, moves without the ball in a way that like tracks within that offense in terms of what they need. Yeah, that could work. Like a shooting wing, like a shooting guard wing kind of vibe. That could work. Yeah.
Yeah.
It works a lot better if you don't have De'Aaron Fox taking up 35 minutes a game. But if Fox isn't there, even if Fox is there, if that player's willing to play like 15 to 20 minutes a night sometimes, I like that actually, Bryce.
Okay. So to me, I immediately kind of went big, but I know I might be in a different headspace than you. But to me, it's like, I don't think Merez is going to get to here, but if Steinbach, I don't think Steinbach gets here either. So probably it's Quaintance is the guy at 20. Like, do they take a chance? I have no idea what the medicals are, Sam. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, but can they be the team that takes a chance? And even if it takes a year for him to fully get there and be patient with them, do they have the ability to have that patience?
If anybody can have that patience because they have Luke Cornett, it should be the Spurs. I've always thought Jaden Quaintance is like a really good defender of Wembanyama. I actually like the idea of taking him because Jaden Quaintance is really good first and foremost. Yeah. Like if his health checks out, like he's an excellent basketball player, but B, like taking him away from someone is kind of interesting to me because I think he's a really good defender and I think he's like a really good Wembanyama stopper, potentially quote unquote stopper. Like you're never going to totally stop him, but yeah, like that's not a bad name though. Like I don't mind that name if you're going bigger. I'm trying, like, why does Koa Pete not make sense here?
No, he does. Yeah.
Like throw him in the dunker spot, physical guy, will go rebound, will go, defend, will kind of do like dirty work things, right? Like, could he become on some level a less explosive, frankly, probably less good than Aaron Gordon, like style of player for this team?
Like, so I think in theory, it makes a ton of sense. My only slight like hesitation would be, okay, now you have him and Carter Bryant where the thing that might be keeping them off the floor is the offensive floor spacing. We've talked about it with the guards, are we getting too much of that? But I think in general, this is somewhere where I would feel very comfortable taking Koa Pete. And we've talked about Koa Pete, a lot in terms of the fit does matter with him. I think that makes sense. I think bigs make sense. I'm struggling because I like a lot of the guards in this range. I just don't know that adding a guard, especially if they don't trade De'Aaron Fox, makes a ton of sense. So I guess you could, but I don't know how much those guys are going to get to operate on the ball. I guess the nice thing with Christian Anderson, Bennett Sturts, I think Anderson probably goes before this, but maybe they just shoot the ball well enough that you can play them off. I think it's too high for like the Isaiah Evans, those
I think
guys.
It's too high for Evans, but yeah, it's an interesting idea, like somebody like that at least.
Like my board right here in this range is bigger guys and the guards. I don't have a true wing really.
So here'd be the true wing. Does Cam Carr make sense for this team?
Oh, absolutely. I just don't think Cam Carr is going to be here. If you told me Cam Carr was here, I would feel good about that.
I think he makes sense. My struggle with this is like they've had success with guys who are like physical and strong.
Ooh,
Cam Carr
yeah, sure,
physical, right?
Yep, it's fair.
We think they don't want to take another guard like ball handler, right? Like even if they love like a LeBaron Philon or a Sturts or somebody like that, like you just don't do it, right?
That's what I would assume unless they have or plan on trading De'Aaron Fox, right? And then like bringing in a young one to start to develop, primary ball handler can make a little bit more sense.
What if Yaxel Lendeborg was to fall to this spot? Or what if they could
trade up,
move up to go get Yax?
Yes, 100%.
Like if you could go from 20, here's the problem that they're going to run into trying to move up, I think, unless some of these other teams are successful moving up, right? From 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I think all of those teams are also like on some level exploring moving up in the draft as well, like into the lottery, right? So I wonder how much those teams would be willing to slide down a few slots. Maybe they would. Like maybe Chicago's in like pure asset accumulation mode and they'd be like, hey man, like 15 down to 20. We couldn't get all the way back up to the top 10. Let's go get something else that makes sense for us, right? Is there a chance that something like if Yaxel was to fall to 15, that's the home run to me. Like go get Yaxel Lendeborg. He's the perfect fit for everything we're talking about. He rebounds, he crashes the glass, he's physical, he's strong. Like he is a multi-positional defender in the way that they need. He is like a great transition player in a way that would fit. I don't know, like where, like that feels like the name to me for them that like I think they could realistically move up into the range of to go get if he was to fall a couple of slots.
No, I that would track for me. Like, I don't know that some of these other guys I would move up for. I mean, this is the duality of where I have him on my board and the fit for the Spurs. He is a name that I would absolutely, hey, if they wanted to put some assets together to go up and get him, that would make a ton of sense to me.
Yep. Okay. Karim Lopez is another name that I'm sure will come up in this regard, like bigger bodied physical forward, right? I don't think Nate Ament will get into that range. Koa Pete makes sense. Like if I was building a Spurs board for number 20, it'd probably look something like Yaxel at 1. Like Yaxel would be number 1 for me in terms of guys that I think I could realistically move up to go get. I would love to go get Merez Johnson as well.
Yeah, I was going to throw that out there too.
Like we haven't talked a ton about like the bigs, like are like among the bigger players, like could you go do something? Hans Steinbach, like not quite what I need, like makes some sense, but not quite it. Adai Mara, I think doesn't make a ton of sense because can't play with Wembanyama. Steinbach, in theory, you might be able to squint and look at it. Merez, I think like could play the 4 next to Wemby in the dunker spot and doing some certain things, right?
Well, Merez has more versatility defensively than Adai Mara, Hans Steinbach, etc.
I think that my list would be a guy among guys that like realistically could get into the like 14, 15, 16 range where I could probably trade up for, right? I think my list would probably be Yaxel 1, Merez Johnson 2. I mean, do we want like a questionable shooter in Swain? Like, is that?
I was trying to think about him for them. I think what he does best, I don't know that I see that as much of a need for San Antonio, I guess.
Okay. So for me, then it would probably be like Cam Carr 3, Koa Pete 4, and then like whatever your grade is on Quaintance medical wise, right? Like sure. I don't know where that's going to net out, but something like that. And then like does Zuby make sense as like an early reach or as a trade down? Does Terrace Reed make sense? Like any of those guys?
Yeah. I mean, I like those guys. Again, just adding to the big man room. And so, depending on where those guys fall on your board, whether it's 20, like my other thought was, do you package all of those second round picks and can you get it like going from 35 to 31? Does it just take those other two set? What does it take to get there to get the first pick of the second round? Right. We saw Phoenix do that.
Like, I don't know how valuable those picks are this year.
I would assume you probably have to add something else unless that team needs to fill out their roster with second round picks or has a plan for them or whatever.
Yeah. Like the only value there for the Knicks, particularly who have 31 could be.
Okay.
Right?
I thought it was the Knicks. Yeah.
If they need multiple minimum contract players in the second round, right? Where like you're bringing in 24 and you're going to have 2 other rookies on minimum deals because you're paying Mitch, you're paying Shamet. So like you need to save $5 million extra dollars against the tax on each roster spot at that point because you're going way up over. Maybe I could see that. Like that's not impossible that they particularly could value that. I think.
And like, so if you get up there, do any of these names end up falling or is, going a different direction, especially if you took a bigger player at 20, then you just take Richie Saunders at 31, right? Or something like that. So they like are Alex
in Caravan or
Caravan. Yes. With Swigo leaving, my board goes to about 39 now. I have about 9 guys here into the second round. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of cool, kind of interested in some of these names.
I have 5 second round I have 35 guys where I'm like, these guys are worth guaranteed contract guys. Sure. It's like Isaiah Evans, Alex Caravan, Emmanuel Sharp, De La Rhea is a name for them. Yeah. Like I think that you could track with like 6'6", can shoot, doesn't really defend super well yet, but like, just needs to get more physical at the end of the day. Again, though, like this is a team that's like kind of building their identity. I feel like on playing physical basketball on some level, right? Between Harper and Castle and the way Wembanyama was playing in the finals, right? Zuby, I think tracks there. Reed would track there if he would fall. So yeah, I mean, here's the other name that we haven't brought up. We haven't brought up Alan Graves. Like I can see this team being an Alan Graves team. Sure. Too. Like he makes a lot of like at number 20, not at number 35 or whatever, but like at number 20, Alan Graves like does make a pretty real amount of sense. Again, a guy that you and I probably wouldn't take that high, but moves the ball quickly, rebounds, wins extra possessions. Like this is an organization where if they took him at 20, I would be like, okay, I at least understand what your plan is for him. And I understand the idea of taking him a little bit more because you have a set roster and you're trying to fill specific gaps. And I think he can do some of that.
I agree with that. I think this would be a good spot for Alan Graves. That is a good name there.
Yeah. I will shout out second rounders for them that I like. I like the idea of Malik Brown there. I like the idea of Emmanuel Sharp there. Mm-hmm. I like Alex Caravan quite a bit. I mean, if you really want to go like bigger body, like Felix Okpara or someone like in the 40s, I think that those are the names that I would like really track with there. I mean, look, if they want a third guard, if they're not planning on re-signing Jordan McLaughlin, like you have the Braden Smiths, you have the Bruce Thorntons, guys like that. So those would be other options too, I think, late in the second, or in the middle of the second, rather.
Yep. I like those names as well as potential. So one or two of those second round picks. I would not take all three of those second round picks if I was them, but they may not have a choice.
Yeah, I would guess that they're not going to have to take all of them. I would guess that they'll be able to like sell off one or two of them. But regardless, I think we've given them enough names here. Bryce, long conversation on the Spurs. Not super surprising, I guess, that this one went a little bit longer, given that they made the finals and have some questions. Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, Motor City Hoops Substack, along with the Game Theory Substack, where a lot of the names we just dropped, we have video breakdowns, draft show content, whatever it may be. You can find that over on the Game Theory Substack, along with right here, all of our offseason previews. NBA season and playoffs are over, but our lives will continue with mock drafts and offseason coverage of free agency and trades and summer league and everything that happens. So it will not stop over here on the Game Theory podcast either.
Appreciate everyone for coming through. Appreciate everyone for being here. Like Bryce said, hit the subscribe button on the Substack. The NBA Draft Guide went live today. So go to The Athletic, subscribe there, read that. We will be back either today or tomorrow with another one of these. So until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.